we're recording. Great. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Django. I know we've been covering Django in bits and pieces up until now, but here on out we're really going to be diving into Django, what it is, and how to use it. Does anyone want to take a stab at defining what Django actually is?
Framework.
It's a framework, yes. Good. And what is a framework?
It's a collection of programs, libraries, tools, kind of things.
Yeah. So a framework is it's a good way of putting it. A collection of libraries and tools. So like what we think of as Django is actually many, many libraries all packaged together. And in many ways, it is just a library like any other. When you download a library in Python, all you're doing is essentially saying, I'm going to copy all of this Python code and paste it into my own program so that I can use it whenever I want. And Django is just a really, really big version of that. And the job of a framework in particular is it's supposed to make your job as a developer easier. And specifically, frameworks like Django are designed to help you build full stack web applications. So back end, front end, and everything in between. Generally speaking, what people do today is they use Django or some other backend framework like Rails or Node to make a backend, and then use some sort of JavaScript framework as a front end like React or Angular, and that's what most people typically be doing. But you can use Ruby on Rails and Django to make full stack applications. They're just a bit too slow for the modern web user. They're not going to be responsive like we expect a website to be nowadays, but they work. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be making a full stack web application. So it'll be in theory totally usable. And later we're going to learn how to use Django as an API backend layer and use in conjunction with React. And that'll make more sense after today and further we get into this. So first off, I want to make sure I have Django installed. So I'm going to do Python-m Django -- version. Oh, no module named Django. All right. I'm going to do Pip Install Django. It'll take a little while because Django is pretty big.
So we're not doing a virtual environment for the Django install.
Good question. We will be doing a virtual environment, but I want to make sure I have Django installed globally because I want to do this. I'm going to actually start a Django project before I do the virtual environment. And I can't run the Django admin command if I don't have Django installed. I'm going to run Django admin, start project. I'll call it my site. There it is. I'm going to go into my site. There's my manage.py. Now I'm going to set up my virtual environment with Python-m then. There we go. Then I'm going to run source then /bin /activate. I'm in my virtual environment. You can see the then there, letting me know that's where I am. Now I actually need to install Django again in the context of the virtual environment. So I downloaded it globally earlier so I could run Django admin and start this project. And now I need to make sure it's installed inside this virtual environment as well. I know in the past we had the virtual environment set up on the same level as the Django project, and you can do it either way. And I just wanted to make sure, as long as the virtual environment is accessible somehow. So I'm going to open this up. And take a little tour through things a little bit. So first off, just kind of looking at all the things that Django admin gave us. Manage.py. So that's the command line utility that lets us interact with Django in various ways. So as you know, all of the cool things that we can do, like making migrations, are all done by running manage.py and something else. And it's not much to look at. They don't have every command already set up here, because this is all kind of imported from somewhere else. But this is the kind of portal we use to access all these command line utilities. We also have --init, which is empty. And this is just a file with the dunder in the file name, and this needs to exist in order for it to run it properly. I don't know why it needs to exist exactly if there's no code in it, but this is how it's set up, and this is how we're going to do it, because the whole idea with Django and other frameworks is, what they're saying is, all right, we have our way of doing things. If you do it this way too, you're going to save a lot of time. So we don't really need to necessarily know what this --init does, as long as we know it needs to be there. Settings.py we've interacted with a bit already. So this is where we get to do things like, setting up what database we use, what apps are installed, everything like that. URLs, think of it as like a table of contents for your Django site. So this is the file where we're going to write all of our routes. Remember when we did HTTP server, we had to do that kind of by hand. Django makes that a lot easier, having this URL patterns thing. We're going to get more to that today. We also have this Wsgi. Really don't worry about it. It exists. It's for certain types of web servers that we're not going to be really getting into. But it's there. If you ever want to read more about it, you absolutely can. They actually tell you exactly where to look. So I'm going to open up the command line again. Good, I'm still in my virtual environment. So notice we haven't made any apps. We haven't created a database, nothing, right? But we can still start a server by running python manage.py run server. Uh-oh. Okay, now we're still in the server. It just says you have unapplied migrations, your project may not work properly, but it's not telling us that we have to do that. We have to stop. And now if I go to, by default, it's at localhost 8000. The install works successfully. Congratulations. So Django has this kind of default landing page. And it says that we're seeing this page because debug equals true in our settings file, and we haven't configured any URLs. So we're going to make, once we actually create our Django app, we're not going to be seeing this anymore. But this is a good way of, by running your server and going to localhost 8000, is a good way of checking, okay, is Django running properly? And if we see that rocket ship, it means it is.
What was the command again for the start the server?
It was python manage.py run server. Run server, all one word. And the cool thing about the server is we can actually see its activity right here. So as soon as I visited the page, it did a GET request, HTTP 1.1, got the CSS, got some cool fonts. So whenever you're running a Django project and you have the server running and you're not sure exactly what happened, you can always take a look here at the server output, and it'll tell you exactly what kind of activity your server is getting. Any other questions about setting up a Django project? All right. So let's see here. All right, so now I'm going to start a new app. I'm going to go python manage.py, start app, and I'm going to make a polling app. So there will be questions and choices that people can pick. Those called polls. And now I've got a folder here called polls. And remember, a project consists of many apps. So my site is kind of a larger umbrella under which I can put several apps, including this polling app. All right, so now I'm going to go to this file right here, polls views.py. So I have right here from Django shortcuts import render. I'm also going to say from django.http, I'm going to import something called http response. And I'm going to make a method called index, which takes a request as an argument. And all it's going to do is going to return an HTTP response called hello world, welcome to the poll index. So I'm going to kind of do all this stuff kind of right now and then go back and explain how it works once it's done. So next I'm going to go, let's see here. We got that. So next we need to make sure that there's a URL that can come here. We already have urls.py at this level in the project level, but we also need to make it in the app level. And this doesn't exist by default. So I'm going to say touch polls/urls.py. And then I'm going to say from Django.urls, import path. And from import views, so from this folder, import the views.py. And I'm going to set up a variable called URL patterns. Set that equal to a list. And the only thing I'm going to put in this for now is going to be path. It's going to take 3 arguments. An empty string, views.index, and name, which equals index. All right. I'm just curious, does anyone have an idea of how, I know I haven't really explained anything yet, but based on context clues here, what may be happening so far?
Index is usually the default page, the index.html.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we're making a default page. We're making a landing page, an index. And so we're setting up our URLs and views to correspond with that. And right now, the view is just a string. So I created urls.py at the app level. I need to connect it to the URLs at the project level. So it's got its own URL patterns thing here. And I'm going to add a new item to this, path, polls, / oh wait, I need to, from Django URLs, I also need to, along with path, I also need to import include now. And I'm going to be including polls.urls. So this is a lot of code. So in the URLs for the project, I'm kind of creating a namespace called polls. So in our URL, we'll go to localhost 3000, be able to go to localhost 8000/polls. And then this line right here says, I want to include all the URLs in the app level polls.urls. Down here, I've got the index page. And this index says, all right, this is essentially if I don't put anything after the URL, we're going to go to views.index right here and render this HTTP response. And this method says, all right, so here's the URI path that it's expecting. This is the thing from our views page that it's supposed to be running. And this is the name of the route. And if we look at our thing right here, if we go to /polls, hello world, welcome to the polls index. All right, so this is we're going to be repeating this pattern a couple times to help you master it. But the general idea is at the project level, that's the word for it, you set up a URL space called polls, and then everything in polls slash whatever comes after that will be in here in polls.urls. And views is going to be talking about what you actually see, which in this case is just an HTTP response with look into that. I can even look at this. I should be able to see the GET request to it. Yeah, get/polls/HTTP 1.1 200. Okay. So now I want to take a look. So we've been using PostgreSQL databases up until now, and we're going to be continuing to use those for the most part. But because I don't really want to get into Postgres stuff right now, I just want to get into Django stuff. We're going to be using the default kind. So we go to our settings.py. Got databases. So it's got here django.db.backends.sqlite3, name ospath.join db.sqlite3. So SQLite is an extremely lightweight SQL database, and it's essentially just a file. Like a Postgres database is much more involved. A SQLite database is literally, it's essentially a glorified CSV. So as of now, this will work fine for our purposes here. In the future, we'll be making sure that we set up a Postgres database for this to connect to. And we've done that before already. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, remember when I started up the server, I mentioned that there are unrun migrations. So I'm going to run them by running python manage.py to migrate. So this is just all setup stuff. It doesn't have anything to do with, necessarily to do with our database, so the data we're going to be saving. It's just a general setup thing. And now we're going to get into something that's extremely, like, kind of gets to the heart of how Django is set up and why. And that's called Model View Controller Architecture, or MVC. Has anyone encountered this term before, MVC architecture? I see someone nodding. Yes. What is it?
It's like separation of concerns. So you have a model that kind of defines a blueprint, right? Or a data view is for how to display the data. Controller is to handle the logic of incoming requests. They all work at a triangle, some sorts.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. So MVC is a way of separating concerns. And it's a philosophy that's based on the idea that you want to make sure that everything only has one job and that the user interacts with the database directly as little as possible. We're putting layers of difference there. And when we look at Django, how it does MVC is we actually have something called models here, models.py, and we've done that before, right? Creating classes. In views, we have something right here called views.py, but that's actually not the view in this case, believe it or not. The controllers are actually going to live in a folder we're going to create called the view is going to live in templates. That's where we're going to write actual HTML to render as opposed to just HTTP response. What we call views.py is what we call the controller. Essentially, the views is supposed to say, when I get a request to the index, what am I supposed to do? And the best metaphor I've ever heard for kind of explaining MVC is a restaurant. So as a customer, you're the user, right? You sit down at the table, and then you open up, like the table itself, and the menu is your view. This is what the customer interacts with and what they see. When they're ready to make an order, they talk to the controller, which is the waiter. The waiter takes their order, brings it back to the kitchen, and says, you know, they want the chicken piccata. The kitchen itself is the model. It's where all the data lives, and it can process the request saying, okay, here's what we need, and it spits it back out, and then the controller brings it to the view, and then that interacts with the user. We also have a diagram here that's, let's take a look at this. So this is more of a technical one. Okay, so now they say that the view is views.py. Okay, I don't like this diagram actually. There are better ones out there.
What's MVC?
Model, view, controller. This one's got a monkey on it, so it must be good. All right, so user interacts with the view. The view alerts the controller of an event, like clicking on a link. The controller updates the model, so this is where our data lives. The model alerts the view that it has changed. View grabs model and data updates itself. Again, I feel like this is also not a great one because I feel like this is supposed to go through the controller to the view.
Django's naming is like the view is in fact the controller in Django, whereas the template is technically the view.
Yeah. Why are these all transparent?
Is there not a diagram in the curriculum?
There is one. I just didn't. It kind of didn't mention a controller in there.
There's like I thought there was like a thing that says,
yeah,
like the model, yeah, right there. This is MVC framework.
Yeah, no, I got that.
That was the first one.
Yeah.
It's the
Like this one?
It's not like an actual diagram. Go back to the table.
Oh.
There's like a table at like.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I can show you right here. So this table is kind of what I'm going off of. So the model is models.py, view is the template folder, which we're going to get into in just this minute, and the controller is views.py. And I feel like this diagram here is actually I feel like this is a good way of explaining it, is the user's kind of over here. User interacts with the view. The action goes up to the controller. It updates the model notifies the controller, and then the controller updates the view. So again, think of that, table, waiter, kitchen. So from the table goes to the waiter goes to the kitchen, brings back the food. Any questions about MVC architecture right now? It'll make more sense as we get into it as well, but I just want to kind of make sure the concept is landing a little bit of what this is and why we use it.
The view was the waiter? The view was the menu.
View is the menu.
Controller was the waiter.
The controller is the waiter. The controller, so essentially the controller in an MVC architecture should be doing most of the work. The view just says, okay, I'm going to show everything to the user, and then tell the controller when something changes. And then the controller is the one that says, okay, I'm going to go over to the model, tell the model to update, get a response, bring it back to the view, and tell the view what to run. So that's where the restaurant metaphor takes it right down, because obviously the chef does a lot of work in a kitchen. But if the chef could just instantly make food, then the waiter would do like all the work.
The chef doesn't get the credit for it.
Yes.
For good or bad.
Yeah. I feel like in MVC, it's the opposite. The controller often gets people don't really worry about the controller. It's like, oh, look at all this cool database you have. Look at these beautiful pages you have. And the controller's the one that's actually keeping things running. So in our MVC architecture, we're going to make some models. So this is a poll. So I'm going to make two classes. I'm going to make one for questions and one for choices. And a question should have many choices. So I'm going to say, make a class called question. Create some models.model. It's going to have, we'll call it question text. It's going to be models.charField. Max length is going to equal 200. And we're going to give it a publication date. That's going to be models.datetime field. Call this date published. And then in our choice class, going to make sure it's related to a question. Who remembers how we set up that association? Remember this? I know this was 2 weeks ago.
Well, like foreign key or many-to-many.
Yeah. So this is going to be a foreign key because it's a one-to-many relationship. One question has many choices. So I'm going to say give a choice has a question, which is equal to models.foreign key. The model in question is going to be the question. I'm going to say make sure on delete equals models.cascade. So if we delete a question, we also delete any answers associated with it. And the related name is going to be choices. And the related name is what's going to add, make sure that questions have a method called choices, which gives them all of its associated choices. The choice is also going to have choice text, which can equal models.charField. And it's going to have a number of votes. And votes is going to equal models.integer field. And the default value is going to be 0. Get out of here. All right. I also need to make sure, so any questions about these models and how we set them up? Should all be familiar from 2 weeks ago and the work that you were doing during this last week. I also need to make sure that before I can run a migration to add these to the database, I need to make sure that this app is registered in my settings.py. So we go to installed apps. There's now one called polls. Now that I've done that, I should run python manage.py, make migrations, polls. So it ran a migration, created 2 models, question and choice. And if I'm ever curious, I can always check out that migration right here. There's the question, here are the fields. Here's the choice, here are the fields. And now I can run the migration by just running python manage.py, migrate. All right, everything's okay. You should have a database now. And let's test that out, see if it's there. I'm going to clear the screen real quick. I'm going to install Django extensions so we can set up a cool we're going to be using the Django shell with Django extensions. I don't remember what the word console. Console is the word I was thinking of. Mondays. All right, in order to use Django extensions in my installed app, I need to make sure I have Django extensions down here. And then to run the shell, I'm going to clear again. And to run the shell, I'm going to run Python manage.py shell plus. This is our interactive console. Now, if this works, it should know what the question model is. So I'm just going to type in question, class polls.models.question. Everything's working the way it should be so far. If I do question.objects.all, I get a query set with nothing in it because there's nothing in our database yet. So let's add a question to our database. So I'm going to, before I do that, I'm just going to import a library. I'm going to from Django.utils import time zone. And then I'm going to make a new question. I'm going to call it Q equals question. Question text. Going to be, how do you like Django? And the pub date is going to equal time zone dot now. So Q is a question object. But if I look at Q.id, nothing comes up because it hasn't been saved to our database yet. It only has an ID if it's been saved. So I can save it to the database by running Q.save. Now if I check Q.id, now it has the ID of 1. Should be able to check its question text and its update. Datetime.datetime 2022-24. And we can always update this if we want to. If I want to say, I can reassign Q.question text equal is Django fun, and then run save again. And that'll overwrite what was in the database before. I can run question.objects.all. And there it is. Question object 1, 1. So that sucks, right? I'm just like looking like, okay, I want to see all of the questions in my database. And I get question object 1. It's not very descriptive. It doesn't tell me anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update my model a bit to make it more descriptive. Just going to exit the shell real quick.
Enter the shell.
Python manage.py shell plus, shell underscore plus. So essentially, when we run in the query set, what's being run is the str method that this class has that it inherits from Python as a whole. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a dunder method to overwrite the string method so that it'll display the way we want it to. I'm going to call this def dunder str dunder. Take self as an argument. And I'm going to return something more like this, like id self.id question text self.question text. So I'm going to do something similar for choice while we're here. So now that I've overwritten the string method for both of these classes, I'm going to open up the shell again. And I'm going to look at question.objects.all. And now we've got a query set that has question, ID1, question text is Django fun. a lot more descriptive. I can also do something like, Q equals question dot objects dot get ID equals 1, so just get that first one. If I do Q, I should be able to do Q dot choices dot all, which gives me an empty query set because we don't have made any choices yet.
Can you explain what the STR method
Yeah. So when I did, earlier when I run Q right here, just Q, it gives me this. Earlier it gave me the question object 1. And what's happening is it's running a method called str that all Python objects have inherently. And so this is that method, that's the name of this method right here, under str dunder. And so when we make our own dunder str method inside a class, when we display the object, it'll find this str method that we created and use that instead of the default one. Actually, I wonder. I don't know if it'll let us do this. Yep. So I can run that from the command line q.dunder str right here. It does the same thing. All right, so again, we have our question. We don't have any choices yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some choices for this question. So I'm going to run q.choices.create. Choice text is going to equal, it's so much fun. And I'll do .choices.create again. Choice text equals meh. And q.choices.create. Choice text equals more like Django away. Now if I do q.choices.all, let's see if I can remember how to spell it. I have 3 choices. Now, quick question. When we made that question, right? We created question.new, and then we ran question.save, right? I didn't do that here. But all of these choices have IDs. They have IDs, it means they were saved to the database. So what changed?
create?
Exactly. So create is a method that creates a new object and saves it to the database in one command. And by running this question object.choices.create, it automatically knew to set up this, when it's created this choice object, to automatically associate it with this question. And I should be able to say, let's see here. Choice equals choices.get, choice.objects.all.get, objects.get, ID equals 1. I should be able to say choice.votes is 0 by default, because that's what we told it to do. And choice.question is question with the ID of 1. So now we have questions and choices, and we go from one to the other. Any questions about, so this is this is kind of the basics how we did the model. This is all the stuff we've done before, right? In many ways. So any questions about how we set up models and how they interact with one another? Who here feels like they could set up models like this and get a shell working, no problem? It counts if you have the dots in front of you. Okay, then yes. Okay, cool. So, all right, so model. So our M of our MVC is done. It's all very good and all, but it doesn't, as a user, unless I have access to this shell, which I shouldn't, it's useless to me. So now we need to get it from the model to the view. And to do that, we need to go through the controller. And as a user, right now, I only have one way of actually asking the controller to get something, right? How do I as a user try to say, I want to see this, like, I want to see all the questions or just one question? What is the tool I have as a user?
Just web browser.
The web browser. Specifically, I can visit URLs. I can go to localhost 8000/polls. Is that still up here? Let's go. So we can go to localhost 8000/polls. And I should see what I'm asking for based on that URL. So we're going to add some more routes to our URLs file, so that as a user, I should be able to see all of the polls, just all the questions, one question, the results, and I should have the option to vote. So we're going to be adding a bunch of new things. So here's polls.url. So right now all we have is index. We're going to add some more. So this path, the pattern is going to be int question ID slash going to a place called views.detail, which we haven't created yet. And the name of the route is going to equal detail. So this right here represents the ID of a particular question we want to visit. So if I want to be able to, so what I want to be able to do is if I say go to polls/1, right now there's nothing there because we haven't set up that route. But I should be able to write polls/1 and see the details of that one particular poll. The next one is going to have a similar way of doing it. Int question ID slash results slash. That's going to go to a place called views.results. The name of the path is going to be results. And finally, we're going to make one called int question ID slash vote. Go to a place called views.vote. And the name is going to be vote. So these URLs should exist. I'm not sure what's going to happen if we try to visit them right now. Oh. So I can't be reached. Did the server go down? Ah, okay, we're getting an error here. So when things go wrong with your Django site, the first thing you should always check is the server output. Module polls.views has no attribute detail. So it tried to go there, and it's getting a thing because there's no views.detail. It doesn't exist yet. And it's not letting me run this entire website if this discrepancy isn't fixed. So let's fix it. So I'm going to leave index as is for now. Let's make one called detail. I'm going to take a request as a argument, and it's going to take the question ID. And for now, we can just return an HTTP response that just says You're looking at question ID. We can do that with results and vote as well. So this isn't a website yet. This is just things that can handle. This is just controller actions. We don't have any views yet. So result says when I get this request, here's what I do. I return an HTTP response. These are the results of question. Vote, request, question ID. Again, return an HTTP response. You are voting on question ID. All right, so the server looks like it kind of rebooted itself once I saved this file. And now it's working again. Now if I check my URLs, I can go to 1. You're looking at question 1. You go to 1/results. That works. And vote. That all works. So quick question. When I'm running these, so I have these things, request and question ID as arguments here. So what is the question ID? Where is it getting question ID? Exactly. So at URLs, my poll here, so when I go to poll/1, I've got this thing right here saying, okay, get this from the URL and run views.detail. So it's sending this to this method as an argument. Wrong place. And actually, I'm curious now. I wonder what will happen if I do this. So if I go to poll/1 and look at my server, get out of here. So here's the request object that gets handed to it automatically, and here's question ID. So those come from the view, from the view such as it is. Essentially, where it goes to the controller, which is both the URLs and the views, and gives us this. Obviously, we're going to make this do a lot more heavy lifting than it is right now. Right now, all it does is just says, okay, yeah, you got to the place. Congratulations. So this is the controller of our MVC. Any questions on how this is working and what's happening when it runs?
If we were to look at documentation on the whole colon whatever, what is that?
Like this particular, when you say what is it called?
Yeah, like, so if I wanted to search up other methods, like instead of int, maybe a string or like a different kind of data type, like what would be the documentation like?
Good question. So I might want to say, my first thought is going to Django, what is this thing called? URL patterns. Let's see what it says here. URL dispatcher, that seems cool. How Django processes a request, all that, using regular expressions, path converters. Naming URL patterns, that looks like it might work. Virtual URL reversing. I'm not sure why we want to reverse things. I don't think that's not, maybe that's not what we want. Namespaces, perhaps? Okay, so they've got something right here that has that int again. So maybe if I do a control F for int, or see where else it pops up. So they have all these different examples here So capture values can optionally include a converter type. So that looks like what it's called right here, converter type. So I can go to Django converter type URL. Registering custom path converters takes me to the same page, but a specific place I want. This, okay, these are custom ones. We don't worry about that. Not yet. So Django.urls.converters. So you have int, path, slug, str, uuid. This is also an older version of Django. Let's see what this Stack Overflow thing says. So they have URL. This is a little bit different than what we're working on. Yeah. So it does look like converter types are what they use. And if we just did question ID here, and we can even try that right now, just question ID, and then try to go to localhost /1, can't be reached. But we might be able to go to page, and now we're getting a 404 in fact. Because it's going to be reading this as URL as question polls question ID. And now we're getting, instead of a 404, we're getting this type error because it's missing a positional argument. So that int right here is designed to say what we're getting is a variable that will be passed to the views as an argument and if we did give it just type it out, it'll assume that's just literally part of the path. Does that help with the question? Yeah, cool. And so I guess the most common ones you'll run into are int and str. There are others as well. I don't know them off the top of my head, but they exist. Good question. Let's make sure that that fixed everything. Well, now we should get a 404 here. Okay, cool. It's all working. Okay, let's see here. So we've been at this almost an hour. So yeah, tell you what. Let's take a 10-minute break. Be back here at 9:58, and then we'll go into actually adding a front end to our full stack application.